When my fiance's mom called me a gold digger at our engagement dinner, I didn't cry. I didn't storm out. I just smiled. Because in exactly 90 seconds, I was about to shut her up with my net worth. I should have seen it coming. The moment I walked into that restaurant in my emerald green dress, yes, the one my fiancé loves, the look started. His mom gave me that up-down stare like I was wearing a clearance rack sign. His sister whispered something under her breath. His dad barely made eye contact. But hey, I still believed love could fix everything. I was wrong. Let me back up. My name is Taylor, I'm 27, and I didn't grow up rich. My parents worked regular jobs. Mom was a teacher, Dad worked at a warehouse. We had more love than money, and I wore hand-me-downs until high school. But I always knew one thing. If I wanted something, I'd have to earn it. So I did. I taught myself coding off YouTube at 16. By 18, I had 3 clients. By 20, I'd launched a SaaS product. And by 24, I'd sold it for 7 figures. But I never changed how I dressed. I never bought a flashy car. I still live below my means. Why? Because people treat you very differently when they don't know you have money. And that's exactly what happened when I met Jason's family. Jason, my fiancé, is amazing. Kind, grounded, funny, and totally not in it for the money. In fact, I didn't even tell him my net worth until after we moved in together. He didn't care. That's how I knew he was the one. But his mom? Different story. She's the country club type. Big hair, bigger opinions. I knew she didn't love me the first time we met. She asked me if I was in between jobs when I told her I worked in tech. Like, girl, what does that even mean? The microaggressions only got worse. Every family dinner, she made little digs. Oh, Taylor, that's a cute bag. Target? Or, you're so lucky Jason has a good job to take care of you. I bit my tongue every time. Jason would squeeze my knee under the table like, don't start. And I didn't. Until the engagement dinner. We were at this fancy Italian place in Napa, Jason's favorite. He'd proposed the weekend before in Big Sur, just the 2 of us. It was perfect. I thought the dinner would be too. His parents, his sister, a few close friends. My parents couldn't make it from Michigan, but they FaceTimed in. That's when it started. His mom gave this long, dramatic toast about how marriage is sacred, and how Jason's always been so generous with his heart. And his wallet. Everyone laughed, awkwardly. Then she raised her glass to me and said, and I quote, "To Taylor. May she always get what she's looking for." Y'all. My jaw dropped. I blinked at Jason like, did she really just say that? But she wasn't done. She put her glass down and said, I mean, it's nice that Jason's willing to settle down with someone who didn't grow up with much. I just hope she loves him more than his bank account. Dead. Silence. Even the waiter froze. Jason looked like he'd just swallowed a bone. His sister stifled a smirk. His dad stared at his plate like it was the most fascinating thing in the world. And me? I smiled. Because I'd had enough. I'd been quiet for months. Let them think what they wanted. But now I was going to end this. I leaned forward, still smiling, and said, "You're right, Mrs. Adams. I didn't grow up with much. That's why I built something for myself." She gave me this tight little smile, like, "Sure, honey," I continued. "Actually, would you like to see?" She blinked. "See what?" I pulled out my phone. Jason looked confused. I opened my investment dashboard and flipped it around. "This," I said. "My net worth. As of this morning." Her eyes narrowed. She squinted at the screen. Jason leaned over and choked on his wine. It read, $8,748,000. Silence. I said, "I didn't tell Jason until after we moved in. Because I wanted to be sure. But since you brought it up," I looked her dead in the eye. I think it's time you know. I'm not after your son's money. If anything, I was wondering if he was after mine. Jason coughed harder. His sister's mouth fell open. His dad finally looked up. And Mrs. Adams? She went pale. I've never seen someone's superiority vanish so fast. It was like watching a villain get caught on live TV. I looked at Jason. Still want to marry me? He grinned. Now more than ever. And then the most shocking thing happened. Jason's mom just stared at me like she'd seen a ghost. And maybe in her world she had. Because I wasn't supposed to win. I was supposed to sit there and take the hit, laugh it off, let her feel superior. But instead, I dropped a number that changed the whole dynamic in less than 5 seconds. $8.7 million. That's not the kind of number people can ignore. Especially people like her. She took a long sip of wine. Then, in this fake sweet tone, she said, "Well, isn't that impressive?" You know the kind of tone that says, "I just realized I might have been insulting someone who could buy this entire restaurant." Jason's sister jumped in with, "Wait, how? Like, you have that from your job?" Her tone was less condescending and more genuinely confused. I smiled. I built a software company in college, sold it, invested smart, been building ever since. She blinked like I'd just told her I was Batman. Jason was trying not to laugh. I could see it in his face. His mom, though? Her lips were so tight, I thought they might disappear altogether. Then she said, "Well, money doesn't buy class." And let me tell you, it took everything in me not to clap back with, "Neither does an Amex black card and a superiority complex." But I stayed calm. Because here's the thing. I wasn't there to fight her. I was there to marry the man I love. I just needed her to understand something. So I looked her in the eyes and said, "You're right. But neither does insulting someone who's about to become part of your family." That hit. Even Jason's dad nodded a little, like finally someone said it. His mom didn't respond. She just picked up her napkin and dabbed the corners of her mouth like she was in some 1950s drama. Jason leaned over and whispered, "Are you okay?" And I said, "Better than ever." Dinner went on, awkward as hell. You could cut the tension with a steak knife. But slowly, things shifted. Jason's friends started asking questions. Not rude ones, real ones. What kind of software was it? Are you building anything now? How did you learn all that? And for the first time in that whole relationship, I got to talk about my actual life instead of pretending I was just the girl Jason's dating. It felt amazing, but not everyone was thrilled. Jason's mom kept throwing side glances. She didn't say much for the rest of the dinner. Just sat there in silence, occasionally sipping her overpriced Chardonnay, while I told stories about my first investor meeting, getting ghosted by VCs, and launching a product from my one-bedroom apartment with a broken AC. The more I talked, the quieter she got. After dessert, people started heading out. Jason's sister hugged me and said, "Okay, so I was way wrong about you. You're kind of a badass." I smiled. Takes one to know one. And we laughed. Jason's friends dapped me up. One of them literally said, "Yo, if y'all break up, I'm proposing." Jason was like, "Back off, bro." But he was grinning like a proud fiancé. And then it was just the four of us. Me, Jason, his mom, and his dad. And that's when the real stuff came out. Jason's dad stood up and reached out his hand. "Taylor," he said, "I owe you an apology." I looked up, surprised. He continued, "I let my wife say things I didn't agree with. I should have spoken up sooner. You've done something incredible with your life, and I respect that." I shook his hand. "Thank you. That means a lot." Then he turned to his wife. "You should say something too." She glared at him, then at me. There was a full 10 seconds of silence. You could hear the piano player in the corner finish his song. Finally, she said, "I judged you too quickly." I didn't realize who you were. And I said, no offense, but you still don't. I'm not my net worth. I'm the same person you thought was beneath you 30 minutes ago. The only thing that changed is now you think I'm worth something. Her eyes narrowed again. That's not fair. It is, though, I replied. Because I've watched you treat people like they're disposable. And I'm not one of them. Jason stood up. Okay, we're done here. He took my hand and we left the restaurant. The second the door closed behind us, I exhaled, like I'd been holding my breath all night. We got in the car, and Jason looked at me like he'd never seen me before. That was the most badass thing I've ever witnessed. I laughed. Your mom's going to hate me forever. He smiled. She might, but I love you more. We drove home in silence for a while, and then Jason asked, why didn't you ever tell them about your money? I said, because I wanted them to know me, not my portfolio, not my investments, just me. And then I said something I didn't even realize I meant until it came out of my mouth. I think I've been hiding who I really am, because I thought if people knew, they'd never see me, just the dollar signs. Jason reached over, took my hand, and said, well, screw them. Because I see you. But even though that night ended in truth and love, the real drama was just getting started. Because 2 days later, I got a phone call from an unknown number. I answered it without thinking. And what I heard on the other end changed everything. 2 days after the engagement dinner, my phone rang. No caller ID. Normally, I let those go to voicemail. But something told me to pick up. Maybe it was intuition. Maybe it was unfinished business. Whatever it was, I answered, and immediately regretted it. Taylor, it's Linda. Yep, Jason's mom. I nearly laughed out loud. Not Mrs. Adams, not Jason's mom. Just Linda. Like we were sorority sisters. She didn't even pause before launching into her monologue. I've been thinking, she said, her voice smoother than the Chardonnay she sipped while throwing shade at me just 48 hours ago. I may have misjudged you. I'd like to have lunch. Just the two of us. Clear the air. Now, I'm not naive. I knew this wasn't about clearing the air. This was a power play. A way to regain control. Maybe she thought I'd be more agreeable one-on-one. Or maybe she wanted to find some weakness to poke at. But part of me was curious. I wanted to see what she'd say when there was no audience, no wine, no safety net. So I said, sure. We met at this upscale little French bistro she liked. I walked in wearing jeans, a plain white tee, and no makeup, just to make a point. I didn't need designer labels to prove anything. She, of course, was dressed like she was heading to a board meeting at Vogue. She gave me an air kiss like we were old friends and gestured to the seat across from her. So, she began, after ordering a $19 salad she wouldn't finish. You really surprised me the other night. I raised an eyebrow. How so? Well, she said with a little laugh, you don't exactly present like someone with money. That's not an insult, of course. It's just unexpected. There it was. The real Linda. I don't present with money, I said, because I don't need to prove anything to anyone. She sipped her water like I'd just dropped something sour in it. But don't you think people judge based on appearances? That perception matters? I leaned in. It does. And you judged me. And you were wrong. That shut her up for a second. Then she said, look, I know I came off strong, but I'm a mother. I'm protective of my son, especially when he's getting married. I nodded. I get that. But protectiveness shouldn't look like classism. Her expression flickered. She knew what I was saying, and that I wasn't backing down. She, of course, was dressed like she was heading to a board meeting at Vogue. She gave me an air kiss like we were old friends and gestured to the seat across from her. So, she began, after ordering a $19 salad she wouldn't finish. You really surprised me the other night. I raised an eyebrow. How so? Well, she said with a little laugh, you don't exactly present like someone with money. That's not an insult, of course. It's just unexpected. There it was. The real Linda. I don't present with money, I said, because I don't need to prove anything to anyone. She sipped her water like I'd just dropped something sour in it. But don't you think people judge based on appearances? That perception matters? I leaned in. It does. And you judged me. And you were wrong. That shut her up for a second. Then she said, "Look, I know I came off strong, but I'm a mother. I'm protective of my son, especially when he's getting married." I nodded. I get that. But protectiveness shouldn't look like classism. Her expression flickered. She knew what I was saying, and that I wasn't backing down. She changed tactics. "You know," she said sweetly, "we have a prenup in our family. Just something we do for all marriages. It's not personal." I froze for a second. There it was. She wanted me to sign a prenup. Not from Jason, not from a lawyer, from her. I said, "That's something Jason and I would discuss. Not you and me." She raised an eyebrow. "Well, of course. I just assumed you'd be open to it, since you're so confident in your independence." I smiled. "Oh, I'm very open to a prenup, but not one that protects your assets. Mine too." She blinked. "Wait, you mean you'd want Jason to sign one as well?" "Absolutely. If we're being fair, right?" She looked like I'd slapped her with a Chanel clutch. That wasn't part of her script. In her mind, I was supposed to be grateful, maybe even nervous, but I wasn't playing her game. I continued. "I've already got lawyers. If Jason wants to draw something up, I'll have my team look at it. But make no mistake. If you thought this was about money, it's about both our money now." She went silent. We finished lunch in near total awkwardness. No fake laughs, no bonding. Just two women, across a table, playing chess with silverware and veiled threats. When the check came, she tried to grab it. I didn't let her. I handed over my card. She watched the waiter take it like she'd just witnessed a coup. When I stood up to leave, I said, "Linda, I'm marrying Jason. Not your money, not your approval, just him." And as I turned to go, she said something I'll never forget. "Then don't expect things to be easy." I turned back and looked her dead in the eye. I never have. I walked out of that bistro and got into my car, hands shaking. Not from fear, but from clarity. That lunch had solidified something for me. I wasn't fighting for acceptance anymore. I didn't need her to like me. I just needed to make sure she never disrespected me again. That night, I told Jason everything. Every word. He listened, tight-lipped. When I got to the prenup part, he looked up. "Wait, my mom brought that up?" I nodded. He stood up and grabbed his keys. I said, "Where are you going?" He said, "To tell her to back off." But I stopped him. "Number, let her push. Let her keep playing games. I'll win every time. You don't have to fight for me." He looked at me like he was seeing me for the first time. Again. God, I love you. But of course, Linda wasn't done. Because 2 weeks later, just as we were finalizing the wedding plans, she made her boldest move yet. She tried to call my parents. I was sipping coffee in my kitchen when my mom called. Now, my mom rarely calls first. She usually texts, and when she does call, it's always, "Just checking in, baby." But this time, she sounded tense. "Taylor," she said, "we just got off the phone with Jason's mother, Linda." My stomach dropped. "Oh no," I muttered. "What did she say?" There was a pause. I could almost hear my dad fuming in the background. She called to suggest we consider having the wedding somewhere more appropriate for Jason's social standing. Said a barn-style venue wasn't the kind of place where her friends would feel comfortable. I blinked. A barn. She meant the renovated $20,000 a day vineyard we had chosen together, with string lights, hand-built oak tables, and a view of the hills that looked like something out of a romance movie. She also, my mom continued, her voice shaky now, Asked about your college degree. Wanted to confirm what school you went to. Said she was concerned some guests might wonder. I was speechless. Not just because of what she said, but because she called my parents. Stepped out of line. Way out of line. I took a deep breath. Mom, you and Dad don't need to respond to her ever again. I'll handle it. My mom sighed. We love you, Taylor. We don't care where the wedding is, but that woman? I nodded. Yeah, she's about to learn where her line ends. That night, I called Jason. He didn't hesitate. Want me to cancel the wedding? I laughed. What? Number, I want to own the wedding. So I made a few changes, not to the venue, not to the guest list, but to the plan. You see, I'd spent years building businesses, building brands. I knew a thing or two about messaging. And if Linda wanted this wedding to be about appearances, fine. I'd show her exactly who she was dealing with. First, I called my event planner, told her to double down on elegance. Not over the top, elevated. We brought in a private chef from LA who'd worked the Oscars. Live quartet, full floral installation, customized embroidered napkins, a whiskey tasting bar for Jason's friends. All paid for by me. Next, I made one last-minute change to the program. Just before the reception, I asked the officiant if I could say a few words. Not about Jason, not about love, but about respect. He raised an eyebrow. You sure you want to do that? Oh, I said. I've never been more sure. The day of the wedding arrived. Picture-perfect weather, sun filtering through the trees. Our guests showed up, phones out, jaws dropping. Even Linda's friends looked like they were walking through a magazine shoot. But Linda? She showed up in full pearls and shade mode. I greeted her kindly, with a smile. Let her think she'd won. And then, the ceremony. Jason and I said our vows. There were tears, there were laughs. It was magic. Then the reception started. We danced, toasts were made. And then the DJ quieted the music. I stepped up to the mic. Hi, everyone, I began. Thank you for coming. I know this day means a lot to Jason and me, but it also means something bigger. People leaned in. Phones came out. I grew up in a family where we didn't have much, but we had values. We were taught that you earn what you want, that respect is never owed, it's earned, and that kindness should never be mistaken for weakness. I locked eyes with Linda. Over the past few months, I've been reminded of how easy it is for people to judge based on the wrong things. Where someone came from, what they wear, what car they drive. But here's the thing. None of that reflects who a person really is. Silence. I'm proud of what I've built. I'm proud of my story. And most of all, I'm proud to marry a man who doesn't just see me, but stands with me. The room burst into applause. Jason stood up and wrapped his arms around me. Linda? She clapped, tight-lipped. But I caught it. The first flicker of respect in her eyes. Not approval, not love, but the slow, reluctant realization that she couldn't bend me. Later that night, as we were dancing under the lights, Jason whispered, You know, you didn't have to go so hard on the speech. I looked up at him. Yeah, but it was fun. He laughed. I married a CEO. No, I grinned. You married me. As the night wound down, I saw Linda standing off to the side, alone, watching us. I walked over. She turned, clearly bracing for another round. Instead, I said, No hard feelings, but let's keep it real from now on. She nodded slowly. You're tougher than I thought. I smiled. And richer. She actually laughed at that. A small one, but real. And that was enough. Because I didn't need to be liked. I didn't need to be accepted. I just needed to be respected. And now, I was. So, no, I wasn't a gold digger. I was the gold standard, and I walked away from that wedding with the man I love. And my damn dignity intact.